Hey everyone, what is going on? What is going on? Welcome to That Man Show. My name is Curtis Brooks. I am your host, men's life coach, executive life coach, specializing in transformational leadership for men. Guys, we've got another great show for you. But first, before we get started, I want to apologize for my tardiness here. Got a 2-year-old here at home, and yeah, sometimes she wins, but nevertheless. We got a wonderful show for you. We're talking about, do relationships fail or do people fail? Go from obscurity to becoming relevant. Now, if any of you have been watching my broadcasts in the past months or even sometime, I think last year, as LinkedIn was wrapping up their LinkedIn audio or heard my broadcast through LinkedIn audio, you would know that I talk a lot about relationships. Yeah, you would know that I talk a lot about relationships and leadership as well, and spirituality also. And so that being said, this relationship piece is a huge piece. But before we jump into that, we are streaming to multiple platforms such as LinkedIn, which is our kind of our home base here, and we're also streaming to my YouTube channel at Men Life Coaching over on YouTube. Again, that's at Men Life Coaching, the at sign Men Life Coaching, and also on my Facebook page. And I believe that you might be able to contact me or reach me over there on Facebook. That's just going to be under my personal account, Curtis Brooks. And once more, if you cannot reach me there, YouTube is free. You don't even have to sign in under at Men's Life Coaching over on YouTube. So we got a wonderful show for you. Do relationships fail or do people fail? Go from obscurity to becoming relevant. Now, this conversation for me is big, as I discussed before, is that I talk a lot about relationships, leadership, and spirituality, all one, and during different conversations that we may have or I might have here on as I'm live streaming, all of those different topics will be a part of one conversation: spirituality, leadership, and relationships. And there's a reason for that because relationships are at the crux of everything that we do. And we can look at relationships, obviously, as a good friend or a best friend or a colleague at work, connecting with people on uh, our subordinates, or something like that. If you're a team leader, just relationships everywhere we go. But it's also relationship with the information that we have, and I think this is the foundation for relationships that we create. How we interpret the information, and that in itself is the basis of relationships. I believe, again, the information and how we interpret the information that we are receiving. And I'm not a conspiracist or anything like that, but I do believe that in a large way that there are people more wealthier than I am, and I wouldn't necessarily say smarter, but wealthier. I'll just go with that. And there are people who are pulling the strings, so to speak. And I think in the way that they're pulling the strings, it's put many of us, I would even venture to say the entire world, in a place where we have forsaken relationships. We have, in much cases, I believe, uh, sought after the image that comes with building a pseudo relationship, so to speak. I think that ideally we're going to connect with the excuse me. Ideally, we're going to connect with the image of what that potential relationship could look like. Again, just all of an assumption, but nevertheless, ideally, when images are put out there, and I'll explain to you what I mean when I say images. Uh, Ideally, it's the television that we watch, Hollywood, and the movie makers. It's social media, the media, and in general, the media in general, not just social media, but the media in general. And ideally, there's a message that they have wanted us to connect with. And it has not always been the best message or the right message. And I think because of that, uh, a lot of obscurity has ensued within mankind, and so to speak. And because of that obscurity that has ensued, and I believe when you put out an image and you don't put out enough information, or you put out an image, images, again, I'm using that very loosely because obviously there are lots and lots of different images. But when you put out those different images, uh, in hopes that people are going to connect with those images, there's typically a story that comes behind the images. Okay, there's typically a story that comes behind the images. And if we don't know the story, especially if the powers that be, again, who are lots richer than I am, uh, if they put out a particular image, there's not always an explanation behind it, because ideally the image looks cool. It could be a character in a movie. He looks cool. He looks suave. He looks like he has it all together. And the likes of a woman as well. She looks really just real hot, gorgeous, drop down gorgeous. And most men would probably maybe rate her a 10 or something like that. But she has all the things that Hollywood and essentially has put together. And so Hollywood typically tries to give us a story behind this particular image they're presenting to us, whether through a synopsis, through coming attractions on a movie, and or through the media. The media tells us about different things that have happened around the world. And so I'm going to go out on a limb and say, again, I'm not a conspiracist, but I do believe strongly that um, there is a message that's been given to us all. And from that message, I'm kind of trying to bring this home now. From that message that's been given to us, we have developed relationships out of that information. And unfortunately, it's the relationship that society has created for us. And I did a conversation last week in regards to the importance of, well, I can't remember the title of the conversation, but I did a conversation. I do remember mentioning that in that conversation, I do remember mentioning in that conversation that when people are pulling the strings, uh, so to speak, or and literally, I would say, not necessarily figuratively, but in a literal sense, when they're pulling the strings, and you've got a society basing their ideas on the ebbs and flows of what they've created. And one of the things I mentioned during that conversation last week was is that when you're looking, when you, if you can, some of you are old enough, you can remember the Marlboro Man, the guy who smoked cigarettes, and or even a John Wayne of different movies back in the day. He was a gentleman who looked rough around the edges, but just blunt and said what he needed to say. And my point in saying all this is that, and even for the women, there was the woman either stayed at home or years later, she had a look to her. She was all polished and put together. And here's my point. These are the images that society has shown us. They have given to us. And naturally, because people, in general, people, we have not stuck to a belief system, or we don't necessarily care about the belief systems, or that stuff seems somewhat mystical to us. And maybe it's far reaching. Well, I don't believe in that. And life is just what it is. It's just what it is, what it is. That's just how it is and how it should be. And the challenge with that is that it has purposely, again, these individuals have purposely created created division. And when division is created, it throws people through different challenges, so to speak. And I thought about this even before the conversation. I started the conversation here. Let me check on here. 1 second here, guys. Give me 1 second here. I want to make sure my comments are coming in. But I did think about this here. Hey, Jeremy, thank you for joining, man. I apologize, guys. I'm just running a little late here getting started, but hey, Jeremy, thank you for joining. And Wayne, if you're out there, brother, thank you for joining as well. And William Rochelle, thank you, sir, for joining as well. Hey, hey, sir, how are you doing? But nevertheless, when individuals are pulling the strings, and we ourselves as people in general, when we don't have belief systems, we're subject to falling to the category or to the buckets that people put, that society places us in. This conversation tonight, guys, is going to be just what it is. It's just going to be out there, and I need you to follow me, because at the end of the day, um, as my brother Wayne here says in his earlier comment, we are absolutely 100% responsible for our relationships. We absolutely are, and we must understand that. And so, due to different measures, society, again, the people who are much richer than I am and who have a different motive than I have, uh, they have created this division. And again, this, guys, this is going to be a different conversation. So I'm not here to look at bullet points and regurgitate things that I have seen over the internet or anything like that. It's just going to be a different conversation. So hopefully you can follow me, guys, and catch the win. But nevertheless, with these people who are much wealthier than I am, they have a different motivation, and their motivation is to create division. And when they create, by nature, I'm going to put this out here. By nature, people, myself included, we are relational people. We are relational people by nature. Okay? We're relational people by nature. Okay? That's just who we are. That cannot be taken away from us. So, what happens is that when you have people who don't give two hoots about the relationship that people are creating and how people are connecting, what happens? It doesn't matter, even if a person is racist or some kind of, or think to themselves that they are superior than others or even inferior. Everyone is motivated and moved by relationships. And when these relationships are taken away from people, especially through the people who are much wealthier than I am, they create images. They create images and ideas and concepts that initially go nowhere. So my point is that a level of division was sown purposely. And it's interesting, as I was preparing this conversation this evening, I was thinking about how when we connect with each other, and the importance of how that relationships are just uh, they are they are imperial. They're just absolutely important. But a person's when you take away a person's idea, or you give them an idea of what what that relationship looks like through the movies, through the media. Now you have to understand, a lot of us are going to say, hey, no, I have my own mind and I think my own mind. I would beg to differ, because through the media it has affected mostly almost the entire world, I would say. And it's interesting to know that, to even think about this on a how that when we go before our judges, through, let's a person goes before a court case or something like that, how our judges and the politicians, the different systems, we're all fed the same information. We're all fed the same information. So if the information prevents us from having the a authentic relationship, and that's where I'm going with that. The information prevents us from having an authentic relationship. The information essentially, the information that they put out. Now, this is the reason why I believe that the information is so powerful, because when they can read the information that you and I are supplying these different organizations, excuse me, with our, how we use social media, what time we come on social media, and how we're scrolling social media, what pictures we like and what pictures we don't like, and different questions that they're asking and things of that nature. And even false stories that are placed on social media, how we respond to those false stories, and where we're commenting on those stories, the different comments that we leave related to the different posts. All of this is data. And again, this is an overly simplified way because they're collecting data on just many different levels. So again, in its most simplest term or explanation, they are collecting data. And so they're making their choices on the way they need to move according to the data they collect. So data is absolutely important to those who are pulling the strings. And it does not take away from the relationship, because relationships are absolutely supreme. Relationships rank above everything. And so what happens is that when we are not seeking after relationships with people, making connections with people through authentic relationships, we are in fact going after the image that they have sown as part of a pseudo relationship. And when we find ourselves going after that relationship, now we have to remember now, behind the image that Hollywood and media, and again the false stories, the false narrative, I'll put it that way, behind this false narrative that's been created, obviously the story is not real. And because the story, hey Kenny, thank you for joining, brother. Appreciate you over on LinkedIn. So because the story is not real, we can find ourselves trying to find our identity in the story, make those connections, even though the story is not real. We can find ourselves making, trying to make a connection with that image that has been presented to us. And so I believe, even on a much deeper level, this is where us as men have garnered our, or at least in our own minds, established an idea of what a man is. Not in its physical attributes, but to give a definition of a man does this, a man does this. And even to include what a woman is and what she does. These are things that we have garnered through this image that society has created. And so ultimately, it has created division. And when it creates division, again, when it does what it's supposed to do, what they intended for this image to do, this was the intent of it now. The intent of this image was to bring about division because, again, the story behind the image was a false story. The story behind the image was not real. But it does not mean that as we're looking at this image, we're trying to make the connection with the images that Hollywood gives us. We're trying to make the connection with those images through social media. Again, being the story, be it false narratives, or be it the story being the truth. We're trying to make connections with those stories. We're trying to find ourselves in those stories that they're telling us, they're sharing with us. And because we can't find ourselves in the stories where, again, the house has no foundation, essentially. And because we cannot find ourselves within the story, within the false narrative, because you have to understand the mind wants to search. The mind is going after a hunt. The mind is searching and seeking and trying to find answers to uh, find out just that question that everyone is asking: Who am I? And because many of us, millions upon millions and billions upon billions of people are asking, Who am I? And so when the powers that be place images upon images and saturate the airwaves, the media, all forms of media with certain types of images and propaganda and just information, whether it's visible or whether it's spoken word or something that you can read, when the marketplace or uh, the media is saturated with these things, we then are feeling the pressure to become what they have established for us to become. Because in most cases, uh, man, men, and I say men just meaning humanity, has been searching for who they are. And so, again, asking the most polarized question in the world is, who am I? Where did I come from? And because we're still searching, society has placed these images in front of us to fill that void. And the problem is that those images are just images with no identity to themselves. And so that's why so many of the stories, be it a movie or some kind of fable that's told, the elders sitting around a campfire or something like that, maybe in a kind of tribal situation, or just sitting around with friends telling stories. Also, all too often, a lot of these stories are given given over to false narratives. And because they're given over to false narratives, it doesn't mean that I don't necessarily think that the person that's telling these stories, that they're being intentionally trying to mislead us. But the reality of it is that whether the story is true or not, the mind itself goes out on a hunt trying to make a connection. But when you find that the story is not true through the image that's been presented to us, you have men and women trying to find themselves still at 40, 50, and 60 years old because of the division that was intentionally sown. Jeremy, thank you for your comments, man. I appreciate you, brother. Jeremy says over here on LinkedIn that we need unity more than ever. We can't afford division. I'm human and I love people. Absolutely, man. That is the thing, Jeremy. Obviously, they know that we are human, and obviously they're human as well. But and I think it's humanity without a heart, and it's just pure evil. But I think the challenge is the way that we can circumvent that evil. It doesn't mean that we're going to change the world in one day. I get it, but to circumvent that evil, we must begin to search for the truth. We must begin to search for the truth, and it's not easy work. It's not easy work. It's not easy work. It takes a lifetime and I would say a lifetime to come up with these answers and to have these conversations and potentially make it look easy. So thank you for your comments. And yeah, I didn't just start this journey, guys. This is not something I just started yesterday. I'm in my mid 50s. Well, actually, matter of fact, we'll be 57 this and what next month. I'll be 57 years old. So again, I didn't just start this journey yesterday. Uh, so that being said, Jeremy says over here, we got a lot of conversation over on LinkedIn. So guys, thank you for being part of this conversation. Sharito, thank you as well, being part of the conversation, engaging in the comment section over here over on LinkedIn as well. And I think there was another comment by Jeremy says, Curtis is on fire tonight. Thank you, Jeremy. Appreciate that. Appreciate that. Thank you. So once again, division has to be sown, guys. We are by nature, we are relational people. We are relational people. We must understand that. And when a child, I'm going to put this out here. I'm sure to maybe to some level or maybe degree that some of you may have seen pictures on the internet where you have two kids playing together, one black and one white, and they're playing together, and there's some kind of caption on the picture that says, or at least I've seen it, where there's been some kind of caption on the picture that was saying that racism was not, these children were not born racist. It was given to them. And and again, I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole or rabbit trail, but the point I'm making is that the division was sown, guys, ladies and gentlemen. So it was intentional that the division was sown. It was purposely sown for us to not connect with each other, because when we don't connect with each other, um, we we are inevitably not going to come into ourselves. And interesting enough, as I was preparing for the show, my question was, we hear a lot, or this is a question I had to myself. We hear a lot about people saying, uh, you don't know yourself. And I've said that as well, too, in different conversations. People must know themselves, get to know themselves. And I thought about, give me one second here. Excuse me. I thought about that statement, and it's true. It's a true statement, but I thought about it because on a much deeper level, in order to know yourself, you would have to be you'd have to do the search. You'd have to go after, you have to ask questions, and be prepared to let some of the beliefs go, the belief systems, the value systems, the things that uh, we have considered valuable to us, or our ideologies and concepts that we have considered valuable to us, and to know that a lot of the things that we have picked up along the way, that we're holding value to, or placing value in those things in fact have been sown. They have been sown purposely to create discord and division. Case in point, many years ago during slavery, there was a thing that was said that people of brown and black people were a third of a person, and I'm not saying that not to stir up anything, but I'm saying that this is the kind of division that was sown. This is the kind of division that was sown intentionally. It was sown with a purpose. Hey, Janice, thank you for joining us over on Facebook. Appreciate you, Janice. Thank you. So, and again, I know it's a kind of a deep, just a maybe not the best example, but it's an example I wanted to share with you because I need you to understand how deep this stuff goes. Because when the powers that be, again, not necessarily any smarter than any of us, but their motivation is control. Their motivation is control. And so when the vision is sown, its purpose is to control different groups of people. And so by now, if you don't know that you're controlled on some level, I want you to reach out to me. Let's have a matter of fact, I have a complimentary 30-minute coaching session that I will make available to you, and let's have that conversation. But it is imperative that we understand that the reason why we can't access the authentic relationships that we are that we're all that's available to every last one of us. The reason why we can't connect with those authentic relationships is because we have not recognized that the division was sown intentionally. That's one of the biggest reasons that we cannot reach that place of coming into authentic relationships, because we don't recognize that the vision was a methodology or concepts or ideas that society, those people, and I mentioned on our last conversation that we know society is not, no, they're not mysterious. They're people with evil motives, individuals, organizations with evil motives, and they're actually people like you and I who, for whatever reason, have turned to the dark side, so to speak. But nevertheless, again, with the wrong motivation. So this is the society. So when you say society, again, it's not to put any kind of mystery in it. It is to really to take the mystery out of it, to let you know that society that we're talking of, or this society that I'm speaking of, they're not mysterious. They're a few people, I would say, groups of people, organizations, that obviously don't stand out in daylight, or we don't necessarily know them. Some of us may know them or who they are, but nevertheless, uh, they have a motivation that is purpose to cause division. And so I believe that is one of the reasons why relationships do fail, because we don't understand the depths of the division. So the question is, do relationships fail? They do. They absolutely do fail. Relationships do fail. They fail all the time. Do people fail? Yes, we fail. But I want to say this. We fail because I believe a lot of us fail because the deck has been stacked against us. And it does not mean that there are people who don't do evil, because there are people who do evil. But I think initially the deck has been the deck of cards has been stacked against all of us. And so we fail in ways that we're paying homage to some kind of image that these people, that these elect people, not officially elected, but that the small group or organization of people organized ideas and methods and things of that nature. We're paying homage to what they have created. We are paying homage to the idea that the concepts, the behind the science, even the science is obscured. Even there's obscurity in the science, but yet somehow certain motivations win over the other. So again, the question: do relationships fail? They absolutely fail. Absolutely, they do fail. But they fail because the division has been sown intentionally, and because we don't understand that a level of division has been sown intentionally, because we don't understand those things, we end up trying to make relationships work under the wrong information. Thank you, William. I appreciate it. William, thank you. William says over on LinkedIn, he says, I'm loving this conversation. I appreciate you, brother. Appreciate you. So again, we end up paying homage to an idea or a concept that has been really baseless. There's not it has, uh, the story in itself has not been proven. It's an idea, a concept, a hypothesis, a theory that has not been proven, but nevertheless, it's being reenacted because, or been a story that's been told for the fact that they know that if they tell a story, whether it's proven or not, that there are going to be many people who are going to begin to build on that story. They're going to take the entire family and move the entire family south on a story that is absolutely baseless, because the division was sown purposely. So if you're wondering why your relationships are not working out, be it married or a significant other, or relationships, be it with your brother, your sister, and things of that nature, there's been a story that we have all purchased. Unfortunately, there's been a story that we have all purchased. And the challenge now is getting to the truth. The challenge is peeling back the layers of deception that was purposely sown. That's the challenge. Sharito, thank you for your comments. Sharito says, I can't imagine a world without people and the relations of each. So I would say that failures among people and their relationships. All right. So she says, so I would say that failures among people and their relationships is part of the whole scenario. I don't mind anymore who or what, who, what, or why it is that it has failed, but rather say to myself, do the do the best of do the best in that relationship, whatever it may be, because it's up to us and humans to make it fail or succeed. Yeah, Sharito, I do understand you and I appreciate your comments. So thank you for that. Again, if you've heard anything I've said thus far, I do agree with you. It is absolutely, and I think Wayne stated this nicely, is that in an earlier comment, even before the show started, that people, we are absolutely 100% responsible for those relationships. And in being responsible for the relationships, we also have to understand, is just as I mentioned to you earlier, that the vision was sown purposely. The vision was sown purposely. So because the vision was sown purposely, it essentially had torn the relationship, that we're all relatable. And it does not absolve us of being responsible. So if a person does something wrong, if I do something wrong to you, my responsibility is to apologize to you and to say, "Hey, I didn't mean that. I'm sorry," or whatever the case might be, or vice versa. But the challenge is because there is an image that's out there that we have, or a story that's been told. Yeah, because there hasn't been a story that's been told that really, in truth, the foundation of that story that's been told, it bears no witness to what we are actually seeing. And so the story in itself, in relationship to the image of what we may see and what we may hear, they're completely different. Though we may, or that these people may create an image, again, through the ebbs and flows of society. Look at how many very varied experiences that we've all gone through society. There was the hippie era. There was the era after the hippies, the 70s, the 80s, the disco era. There was the different ideas of who men are, who women are, and we have all fallen into those ideas. And again, they're just images. And oftentimes the story does not match the image. And so here we find ourselves being faulted. Uh, it's metaphysical, Spock. Absolutely, 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 absolutely. So because we find ourselves trying to fill the gap in a story that they've created that actually has no real true merit behind it, or no foundation behind the story, not a real foundation, because again, the narrative, the story in itself does not support the image. It is a false story. So what happens is that we find ourselves as human beings trying to fill in the gap, to apply our own understanding to that image which has been presented to us. Mm. Michael over on LinkedIn says, clean your own room, then look at what you can do to affect change. Absolutely, Michael. Absolutely, man. Absolutely. I would absolutely agree with that. Sorry about that. Clicked on the wrong button there. But nevertheless, yeah, I would absolutely agree with that, Michael. And there's a scripture in the Bible that says, ensure that you if you're trying to help your brother, make sure that you, I'm paraphrasing this, make sure that you remove the plank out of your own eye before trying to take the speck out of your brother's eye. And as I said earlier, guys, this work is not easy. This work is going to pull back some things, some layers to our ideas of who we thought we were, who we believe ourselves to be. It's going to pull back some layers or peel back some layers, and we can find ourselves in a place where we're just like a floodgate has been opened, essentially like a floodgate has been opened. And so I hope this is making sense to a lot of you. Like I said, I did not want to do a typical coming from a typical place of just regurgitating things I've heard. No, I wanted to come in from a place of uh, from experience, things I'm sharing with you from experience and my journey, and sort of a kind of a collaborative effort to a degree on some of the things that are out there, because obviously I'm not the only one with this information. There's lots of people who are sharing different things coming from the same space. Absolutely. So I just wanted to, again, not give you some information that's being regurgitated, guys. So again, so we know that division has been sown. That is the first motivation, is to sow division. And when they have sown division, and division can be sown in multiple different ways, guys. Division can be sown through religion. Division can be sown through favoritism, uh, through different groups of people. Again, the division, once division has been sown, division has been sown through wrong, erroneous information that the media gives to us, guys. All right. This has been purposely done, guys. This has been purposely done. And this is no hocus pocus. I thought about earlier too. I thought about something earlier as I was kind of preparing for this, is that, we see magic and the musicians on television, and the hocus pocus stuff on TV through Hollywood. And and how the mind works is just from my experience in researching psychology. I'm not a psychiatrist or psychologist or anything like that, but I've just been an avid reader and in psychology, and wanting to understand the mind. And so how the mind works is that if some of you have maybe read a text through someone, or a friend or someone sent you a text message, and the text message was misspelled, and or that there's parts of the words within the text message that was misspelled. And how often do we miss those misspellings? And that when we look at that text message, or read something over the internet or something like that, it could be laced with misspelled words. And they've done studies on this, where our minds will naturally put fill the gap in of that missing word, and where the misspelled word is standing out there clear as day, we don't necessarily see it because our mind likes to fill in the gap. Our mind, unless the word is terribly misspelled, but ideally our mind wants to fill in the gap. And so what happens is that, with the images that the small group of people have put out there, placed out there for the purpose to control us, in most cases we infer our own ideas onto that image. And so, because we are inferring our own ideas, and not only just that, again, as I mentioned earlier, there's a story, ideally, with this image that they present to us. If you are into the comics, or the comics or anything of that nature, each character has a story. Each character has a story behind who he or she is, or their challenges. Again, the antagonist is the protagonist. Each person has a story. Each person has a story. So ideally, even what we're dealing with is good over evil. Again, there's good people. There's evil people, people with wrong agendas or just bad agendas. And the agenda is to control us. So division is sown. And the one other thing that I want to talk about is when we are not secure in our belief system or values. There's a saying out there, and I didn't look it up in regards to who said it. That saying goes, if you don't believe, if you don't believe something, or you'll fall for, if you believe nothing, if you believe nothing, you'll fall for anything. I think that's how it goes. And it's true. It's true. if you and I don't have a belief system that we have been connected with, I'm not trying to convert anyone, whatever your belief system is. If you don't have a belief system that challenges the very ideas that this society, again, society being these people, actually people who are wanting to do evil. It's not a mystery. We're taking the mystery out of this. So there are actually people who are wanting to do evil. So if we don't have a belief system that challenges their ideas or their concepts or the very things that they present to us on television, if we don't have a belief system that challenges those things, or if you have a belief system and you say nothing about it, or you do nothing about it, even to go as far as protecting your family or having these conversations with your family, if you and I don't have a belief system or a value system or concepts and ideas that we're placed value in, it becomes very easy for us to make a connection through a value system that this small group of people, or again, these different organizations, these powers to be, have orchestrated for us to believe in. Because remember, as I stated last week or during my conversation, this society, there's not a value system to it. Because remember, the value systems have changed over time. We talked about this last week. There was a particular man who stood rigid and stoic in the 50s and 60s, and then somehow that man is not as rigid in the 70s and 80s. He's more kind of the cool guy now, and it's the same with our women. Their story has changed. And this is not picking on either men or women. This is the story that society has told us. And because our value system was not strong enough or deeply rooted, there was not a firm foundation for us to stand on, we believed what they told us. And because we believed what they told us, we found ourselves, in fact, moving when the wind had blown. Because they changed. Hey, Jason over on Facebook, thank you for joining, man. Thank you. Because they changed the idea or the concept. These are all concepts, or what they like to call social constructs, because they changed the idea or the concept of what a man looks like, how he should carry himself, and again, to include women as well. This is not a dig on either men or women, but it's understanding that when you and I don't have a value system, we end up placing our value system. Hey, what's up, brother? Over on Jason over on Facebook. So we end up placing our value system, our values within the concepts and ideas that society, so to speak, has created. And again, we end up going where the wind blows. And I mentioned earlier about the mind wanting to fill in those gaps. So as I mentioned moments ago, now they have created an image now. And this image represents their idea. And this image also has a story, as or false as the story may be. Again, this is just a depiction, much like Hollywood does, much like we hear from the movies, different characters. Here's the backstory to this particular character. There's a backstory to that character. So the images that society has created for all of us to fall into, this hole, so to speak, each of these images have a story. But again, the story is false. But the mind wants to fill in the gaps of what's missing from that story. Much like I just said moments ago, how when we are reading a piece of information or some information over on the internet, how often we might see or miss a misspelled word. Someone else can look at that same information and say, oh, the word is spelled wrong. But in our minds, our mind will fill in the gap. So our mind will end up telling a story, telling its own story in relationship to what we're reading, or to relationship to the image that's been given to us. So we must have a strong value system, a value system that supersedes what society has given to us. Because when you and I don't have a value system, something that we can rest our hat on or place our hat on, so to speak, where we can come in and kick our shoes off and feel that we're at home, we have men who are left wondering, figuratively speaking and literally speaking. We have men and women, humanity, I'll put it that way. We have a humanity who is left wandering, trying to discover who they are. Jeremy over here on LinkedIn says, "I believe we will overcome this by choosing better for ourselves, so we don't take on what isn't ours." Yeah, I think we can absolutely overcome, Jeremy. I do believe that we can absolutely overcome, but it doesn't take away. It's like, I'll put it this way. I've been a Christian for some time now. Janice over here on Facebook says we have to stand. Absolutely, I do believe that, Janice, for sure. And I think one of the questions of both your statement here, Janice over on Facebook, and Jeremy's statement, kind of one and the same here. And I would say to that is that uh, it does not absolve us of finding a truth. It does not absolve us of finding a truth. That's like, as a believer, or you might hear people saying as Christians, "Oh, I'm just going to pray. I'm just going to pray," and yet prayer is absolutely important. But just because you pray doesn't mean that you stop living life and you're waiting for God to send the answer to you. And we know that waiting, yeah, you can be waiting in faith, but we know that waiting isn't just sitting there idly and doing nothing. So I think in the midst of our prayers, in the midst of believing that it's going to change, we have to be those individuals who are also seeking the truth. And interesting enough, I think, and even as we're seeking out the truth, God has a way of putting people on our paths, placing people on our paths who will be prepared to answer those questions. And we just have to be able to make the distinction of that this prayer is being answered, or that, as Jeremy said over here on LinkedIn, he says he believed that we'll overcome. So, in our deepest belief, we have to be prepared to know that when the answer is here, know that when the answer has presented itself in our deepest belief or in our prayer, know that when God has answered those or address those questions that we have, because again, it is through our value system that we are making a connection with God, and I think this is in fact the relationships. The key to relationships is spiritual. I often have said that the key to relationships is spiritual. It is not through the images. It is not through an image alone. It is not through an image alone, because I absolutely, we have to, if we're going to believe in different relationships, or base our understanding or our lives on relationships, we have to see those. We have to see those ideas put into play, those concepts put into play. We have to see them, and oftentimes we don't see them, or we hear people saying one thing and doing the exact opposite. So it can absolutely weigh in on us in regards to our belief systems when we see people who say they're Christians or say they believe in God, and yet they're doing something completely different, or whatever their value system is, or whatever their belief system is that when you and I are not in a place to uphold our value system, to uphold that value system, to take a stand on a value system, to take a stand on what we believe, we inevitably will fall to the systems of this world, because through the systems of this world, as I mentioned earlier, there is a pressure that's created. And how do they create their pressure? I'm glad you asked. They create this pressure by bombarding us through social media, through the television, through the advertisements, through the videos, through paid broadcast, paid advertisement, people who are absolutely buying in on their idea. This pressure has been created. And this is why to advertise costs so much money, because if I can get my message in front of you, the chances of me persuading you, the chances of me persuading you uh, uh, on a much larger level is highly likely if I'm able to pay for that service. Again, whether the message is true or not, or whether the story is true or the image is true or not. If I can place you in front of my if I can get you in front of my information, or get my information in front of you, uh, again, especially on a much larger scale, guys, these companies are spending billions upon billions of dollars in advertisement. I don't have an exact figure, but I again, their motivation is to bombard the airwaves, even through the radio, through the internet, or different forms of media. Their motivation is to bombard the airwaves with media. Absolutely, absolutely. Jason Holiday here over on Facebook says that advertisement is a great pressure. It really is. It really is. If a person is trying to diet, let's say a person is trying to diet, or even trying to fast. And it doesn't mean that a person is overweight if they're trying to diet. It just might mean that, hey, they're trying to get to a certain size. So uh, to make up our mind and say, hey, I want to diet in, or I want to fast, and for a certain reason, and whatever that reason might be, it might be for faith, different reasons. Uh, how many different advertisements do you think you're going to see in a hot second related to something? The latest sandwich at Arby's or Wendy's or something of that sort. Food commercials, absolutely. Jason over on Facebook, he says food commercials everywhere. Absolutely, man. You'll see those commercials everywhere. And so again, there's a belief system that we must be prepared to take a stand on. Whatever your belief system is, you must be prepared to take a stand on that. And then look at the question that I posed in the title of this conversation: is do relationships fail, or do people fail? And as my good buddy, my good friend here on LinkedIn, he says, we are 100% responsible for our relationships, guys. And being responsible for those relationships meaning that if I'm sharing with you a particular truth, and you don't have to even believe what I'm saying to you. You don't have to. But I know what I'm sharing with you is the truth. So, being that division was purposely sown, and we're basing our existence, or our lives essentially, on the information that they've presented to us. Now, if we're basing our lives, our family values are structured around the information they've presented to us, and the information is not true, the idea, or the probability of that relationship failing, because it's essentially baseless now. It's based on the idea. And just a, not necessarily a quick story, but just something I've seen. Most of us, and respect to love, don't know what love is. We've garnered the concept of love from the movies. How many women, maybe at a younger age, if you're an adult, and maybe that's not your not your thing anymore, but how many young women had an idea of this knight in shining armor? And perhaps maybe not a man riding on a white horse or a black horse, whatever, but this concept, this idea, this image of that figure, what he looked like, and potentially again filling in the gaps of what was missing, because we just had the image now, but yet we're filling in the gap of what was missing in relationship to that image of what he needed to look like or what she needed to look like. So most of us have garnered our idea of love, of what that looks like, from the idea of what Hollywood has presented to us through the movies. And so it becomes very difficult for us to have relationships, the authentic relationships, when they're based on those ideas and concepts. So again, the question is, do relationships fail or do people fail? I think when the deck has been stacked against us, recognizing that the deck has been stacked against us, uh, the answer is yes to both of them. But does that mean that we don't have a responsibility? No, it doesn't. And that in itself is the challenge. That is peeling back the layers. There's a scripture in the Bible that says, Jesus says to his disciples, "My sheep know my voice, and the voice of a stranger they will not follow." And I'm sharing that with you not to try to promote you to convert or anything like that. I'm sharing with you is that there's a conversation that's been had in that's been had in high places. There's a conversation that's been spoken in high places. And as a result of that conversation that's been spoken in high places, it's presented certain ideas and concepts and images to us. And behind those things that's been presented to us, again, there's a story, there's a beginning. There has to be a beginning, guys. Understand, there has to be a beginning. And when we don't understand the beginning, we can find ourselves looking at the end of that story and trying to, again, fill in the blanks of what's been missing from that story or that image that's been presented to us. All right. So there's a reason why Jesus says, "My sheep know my voice, and the voice of a stranger they will not follow." The mind likes to fill in those gaps. The mind likes to fill in the gaps of what's missing. And so ideally, we can tell a person just part of a story, and and even studies have actually been done on this where they have given a person, an individual, a sentence, and about time they have gotten far, maybe 20 people later or maybe a month later, they're going back to check on this story. This story has created a life, or that from that one sentence, that story has created a life of its own. And so my point again is that the mind intentionally, this is what it does. It likes to create, it likes to build. And when the mind cannot create and not build or make sense of what's been presented to it, the mind, to us in the way of this image, especially in the way that this image is false, it places us in a position, each of us, myself included, it places us in a position. Now, this is golden, guys. I want you to hear this. It places us in a position where we're creating false narratives in our own mind, guys. We end up creating false narratives in our own minds, believing stories they're not even there. And so, can you imagine talking with your spouse or your significant other, and they're saying one thing, and yet we can find ourselves trying to fill in the gap for their conversation? Yet they may have spoken just a part, a fraction of what they wanted to say. And from there, we have created this whole new story from what they've told us, or added or built onto this story from what they were sharing with us. And then our spouse or significant other might say, that's not what I was going to say. Again, this is what our mind does. Our mind likes to build bridges. Our mind likes to make those connections. And uh, when we're not making those connections, when we're not making those connections with the story that's being told, again, with even just a fraction of the story, our mind will tell its own story. Our mind will build its own bridge. And whether that is true or not, how often do we share those findings with other people? And so I think, as I was saying earlier, moments ago, is that this is the image that society has been given us. It's, just throughout history. The concept or the idea of what a man looks like or what a woman looks like has changed. And so we find ourselves filling in the gap. We find ourselves creating the story in regards to what a man is, creating the story for what a woman is, what her duties and what her responsibilities are. And I myself, guys, I'm guilty of this as well. And I wouldn't use the right word as guilty, but uh, I've been a part of this as well. I've been a part of this story as well. But when you start to take the blinders off, guys, you know that relationships are absolutely imperative. And so here's where I believe the compassion comes in. As we are trying to find ourselves, as we are coming out of obscurity, and as the title suggests, we're becoming relevant, coming out of the just the confusion, again, the obscurity, but coming into relevance. Here's how we do this. We understand that, I'll say it this way, we are prepared to take responsibility for ourselves first and foremost. First and foremost, we're prepared to take responsibility for our own self. And that means for the decisions that we've made or didn't make when we needed to make them, we are taking responsibility for those things. That means that we understand that the entire world, and I will say that again, the entire world has been deceived on a large, obviously large scale. And so we understand that. And in understanding that the entire world has been deceived, guys, I need you to get this. Please, please, please understand this. And understanding that the entire world has been deceived through cryptic messages or ideas and concepts and the hocus pocus stuff that Hollywood and self has created. And again, before I go there, I kind of give you this coming out of the obscurity piece of it. I want to say this, and this is just kind of just dawned on me, just kind of showed up. Is that when we're looking at Hollywood for the magic and the magicians and things of that nature, just what if, just what if the idea or the concept behind the magicians and the magic and the hocus pocus that we see through Hollywood, what if that, obviously we know that it's an illusion. We know that, and hopefully you know that it's an illusion. But going back to what I said earlier, the mind likes to place, the mind likes to create a story, whether that story is true or not. And this illusion, so to speak, the mind likes to fill in a gap for that illusion. And so now this just came to me. I'm just sharing my thinking with you. So what if in the midst of this, because the mind likes to naturally fill in those gaps, the mind likes to tell its own story. What if in doing so, the mind builds its own characters out of this hocus pocus stuff? And then we get people who are dealing with, this is just an idea that came across my mind. Then we get people who are dealing with seeing other people because of the magic and this is my idea. I'm not saying that certain conditions don't exist. I'm not saying that, but this is just an idea that I was just thinking about. But nevertheless, so in understanding that a coming out of obscurity, kind of get back to my original train of thought here as we're wrapping it up here. So as we're coming out of obscurity into becoming relevant, we understand that compassion is must become a part of this, because when compassion does not become a part of this process, again, coming out of obscurity and becoming relevant, or from obscurity to relevance, we come to a place of compassion, not only for ourselves, but for others. Obviously, compassion first has to be given to us. We have to understand this compassion is first given to us. But we also have to understand that in this compassion, uh, we are we have to take ownership of our thoughts. So compassion slash accountability. We have to take ownership of our thoughts, because remember, our thoughts are built on something that's false. Our thoughts are consistently filling in a gap for an image whose story is not real. So our mind consistently fills in the blank, so to speak, for that image, creating its own story. So we have to be prepared to have compassion for ourselves and compassion for others. And we have to be prepared to say, hey, you know what? That's mine. That thought is mine. And what I've done in my search for the truth is to apply a scripture, and I believe it is, if I'm not mistaken, it is, for me, it is 2 Corinthians chapter 10 verses 2 Corinthians chapter 10 verses, I think 3 through 6, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. But it reads, though we walk in the flesh, we do not war after the flesh. For the weapons of warfare are not carnal, but mighty through God through the pulling down of strongholds, casting down imaginations and every high thing that would exalt itself against the knowledge of God, and bringing into captivity every thought to the obedience of Christ. Now, you don't have to even necessarily be a believer to understand this, but you do have to understand that words in themselves have power. Words themselves have power. And so when we have these different thoughts that come across our mind as we're leading ourselves, preparing to do the work, leading ourselves from obscurity to becoming relevant, building authentic relationships. When we're prepared to do that, when we're preparing to trust the process. Because I would even step out on a limb and say that's where most of our friction comes from. It's because we're trying to make sense of the relationships that society, these groups of people have presented before us, and trying to make sense on it, trying to build our house on these systems or these ideas that they presented. And I would even, again, stepping out on that limb is to say that this is where a lot of the friction comes from, a lot of us, because we're trying to build our house on a on a foundation that was not meant to stand, meant to control you and I, but it was not meant to stand. Because obviously there are going to be people who are going to challenge me on what I'm sharing with you. But the concepts and ideas that the so-called society or their system, their lack thereof, has presented to us is baseless. So we must be prepared to understand that from years and years of being part of this system, this ideology, these concepts that are taking place in here, we must be prepared to face the thoughts that come out of them, the active thoughts that come out of here. Because ideally, our mind has been for however long filling in the gaps of the story, of a baseless story, so to speak. Our mind has been forever and a day filling in the gaps of a story that is no real story. It's just been an image. So that's the reason why I gave you that scripture, because we must be prepared to cast down every high imagination that would exalt itself against the knowledge of God, against the truth. Because rest assured, the system or the ideologies, that the concept that this society has created for us to be a part of, with all the intentions of controlling us, the whole purpose of it is to draw you out from a truth. And so, unless you and I are prepared to stand on the knowledge that we have ascertained from doing our own search, so to speak, and building a value system around a truth that we have acquired, we have worked for, so to speak, having to strip our own selves of the stuff that we have picked up along the way. We must, in fact, be prepared to take off those old garments, so to speak. We also must be prepared to have compassion for the other people, be it our spouse, significant other, our children, or just people we're doing business with or in a day to day life. We must be prepared to have compassion for them, because ideally their thoughts and their ideas are coming from a system that we have all valued on some level, on some degree, until we were ready to do the work. So I wanted to share that with you before I sign off here. So lastly, this last thing here, we want to make sure that we explore our biases. And this is how this is how we are going from obscurity to becoming relevant. We must be prepared to explore our own biases. We must be prepared to look at our own value systems and be prepared to judge them and compare them, not necessarily with the system that the world has created or ideas and concepts that the world has created, but spiritual value systems. We must be able to pit those ideas from one for the other. And and in doing the work, we we come to we come to a knowledge. We come into a knowledge, a truth, so to speak, that is a value system that we stand on, and know that the value system that we're standing on, that we're after looking at our own biases, again, we're coming out with our a value system that works for us. We must be prepared to, or at least know that those value systems are going to be challenged. So you must have a firm foundation. You must be prepared to let go of some of the things that no longer serve you. This is how we are taking responsibility for 100% of the relationships that we create in life. This is how we're showing up, going from obscurity to becoming relevant, to becoming authentic, having authentic relationships, making way for new, fresh, authentic relationships. Is that we're prepared to peel back the layers and through our findings, challenge those findings. Ask, why do I do this things that I do? What my thinking is? Again, make connection with people who are more knowledgeable than you are in certain areas, especially in the spiritual space. Make those connections with those people. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to believe everything that they say, but it does mean that you are prepared to take the journey. And you don't have to be on this journey forever. But I can tell you from experience that the layers are so deep that if you don't start earlier, sooner than later, you can find yourself missing out on just the wonderful opportunities, the wonderful advantages that life presents to all of us, or is ready to present to all of us, once we peel back the layers and truly discover that relationships are a part of who we are. And we can absolutely have those authentic relationships if we so desire. But in desiring those authentic relationships, we must be prepared to peel back the layers of the division that has intentionally been sown. So, that being said, guys, I hope that this conversation has been a blessing to you. It truly has been a blessing to me to be able to share this conversation with you. So, I want to say thank you, Jeremy, for your continued engagement. Thank you, Michael LeBlanc over on LinkedIn. Thank you, William Rochelle, sir. Thank you. I appreciate you from joining us. I'm going to read your comment. I didn't see your comments, William. I'm sorry. Didn't see your comment until now. It can grow beyond this. Absolutely. So William says over here on LinkedIn, it says, it can grow. I'm assuming he's talking relationships. It can grow beyond this, but we all need to qualify. We all need to equally be responsible for the change. Absolutely. Yeah, it's being responsible for the change, William. I would even say being responsible for that change is one acknowledging that the work needs to be done within our own selves, obviously. And I think that I can't remember who said it earlier. Someone said it earlier, but before we how do you say it here? I can't remember how he said it. But anyways, we must be prepared to make our own bed. Right? I think it said in that way, but we must be prepared to essentially do the work ourselves, and knowing that the work is a process. Be careful that as we're doing the work, and I have to, and I'll be very honest with you, very candid with you, as we're wrapping up here, I have to be mindful of myself, because once I've been given certain truths, or have come into certain truths and tested these truths as well. Absolutely. I don't just say, oh, voila, I've found this and this is what it is. No, I'm testing these truths as well, and to see if there's weight to them. Again, there's capacity to those different things that I have ascertained in my search. And So it is absolutely important that we again uh, make sure that we're doing the work. But here's the part where I have a challenge sometimes as well, is that once I've found certain things, I can be not so patient sometimes with other people getting there. So just as you said, William, so nicely, we're absolutely responsible for, equally responsible for our part in change. We also have to be careful that when the change is taking place in ours, in each of us, we have to be responsible and not placing pressure on other people or making judgments on other people in regards to where they're at. And I have to, again, just being very candid with you, I have to watch out for that concerning myself, because sometimes I'm like, why don't you know this? Why don't you know this? And so that's one of my that's one of my things that I have to work on. And because in my mind, hey, you should know this. Everyone should know this. But everyone can know this, but there's a scripture in the Bible that says, with love and kindness have I drawn thee. So I have to be reminded of that as well. So that being said, guys, it has absolutely been a pleasure. Thank you, Jason Holiday, brother, my brother-in-law. Thank you, brother, for joining me over on Facebook. Thank you, Janice, for joining me over on Facebook as well. Janice has been faithful watching me over on Facebook, and Jason has been joining the group there. So again, thank you both over on Facebook. And if you are on YouTube, I mentioned earlier, my YouTube channel is at Men's Life Coaching. If you have been able to watch me over on YouTube, make sure you subscribe, guys, like the video. And if you have not watched over on YouTube, go check out the channel. There's some other great videos over there as well. And also make sure you subscribe, trying to build up my subscribership as well. And let's see. I want to say again, thank you, Sharito, Old Faithful Sharito. Thank you very much. Thank you, William. I think it's your first time, William, for joining me. So thank you, man, for joining me. Thank you, Michael LeBlanc over on LinkedIn for joining. And thank you, Jeremy. Jeremy has been hanging out with me for a while as well. And who else? We got Kenneth. Thank you, Kenny. Sir Kenny, savor the flavor. Again, thank you, sir. Thank you, my good friend, Wayne. Wayne as well, for joining me over here on LinkedIn, and many of the others who I'm not able to see. Again, thank you. Share this video out, guys. If you have an opportunity or are so inclined to, I would love to get more eyes on this video here. I feel really good about this video, guys, and for what I shared with you, because at the end of the day, when we don't know their plan for us, we are walking in their plan. Okay? When we don't know their plan for us, we're by default walking in their plan. So that being said, guys, I want to say again, very, very, very much thank you. Hope that you guys have a wonderful evening. We will talk with you later. Ciao for now. Bye-bye.